Good afternoon, everyone. It is Wednesday, January 11th, 2023, and it is 3 o'clock p.m., which means it is time for Women in Business. I should caution you, this could be an interesting show as far as tech goes. I tried a new camera before I went live, and apparently I need to work with it a little more because I had to switch back to the old camera and things have been a little dicey as far as what wants to work and what doesn't. So this could be an adventure today. Won't that be fun? Sure, it'll be fun. We'll say it'll be fun because what's the alternative? But that is not what we are here to talk about today. What we are here to talk about today is money. And as with many of the topics that make it into this little show that I do, it's something that I've been thinking about a lot. Part of the reason is because some of you may already know this. For a number of years, I had a corporate job. I was director of marketing for a company called Enmart. And as with most corporate jobs where you go to an office and you work for someone, you get a paycheck every 2 weeks. And that paycheck is a set amount and you know what it is and you know when it's coming, and hopefully it is a good paycheck that doesn't bounce or do anything bad like that. And so it's very consistent. When you start working as a business owner, you have to deal with the fact that money doesn't always flow consistently, that jobs come and go, that if you're working with certain arrangements, perhaps what you're planning on making may not turn out if you're working for percentage of profits or whatever it is. And you have to deal with those kinds of uncertainties. And if you have issues with money, which I have and have worked on quite heavily to have less of them, it can be scary, and it can cause anxiety, and it can cause stress, and it can cause a lot of things. There are a lot of great things about owning your own business, working for yourself, being an entrepreneur. The ups and downs of the money flow sometimes are not one of them. The opportunities to make lots of money could be much bigger. But by the same token, there's also the days where you're looking at your bank account going, boy, if something doesn't happen soon, it's going to get a little dicey around here. And that's part of what I want to talk about today, because there are ways you can combat that stress, and there are ways that you can be a little more zen about money and when it arrives and when it doesn't. And Jamie says, you look fine and it's working just fine. Thank you. Glad to hear it, Jamie. I appreciate that. So, given that I was fooling with my computer and my camera, I am not as set up as I would normally be, but we're there and we're going to go. So the place I want to start, as I often do in these little talks that I do, is the history of women in money. And most of you probably know at least some of this, and that's that for centuries, women had no control over their money, whether they earned it or not. They had no legal control. They had no actual control. They basically, if there was money, it was managed by the male members of their family. Apparently, the requirement for being someone who could manage money was you had to have male genitalia, go figure. And so women for years and years and years were just told they couldn't manage money. Sometimes they were told they weren't smart enough to manage money. They weren't mature enough to manage money. that they didn't make the money, so therefore they should have no say over it. Even though way, way back in the day, there were women who were running breweries, there were women who were bringing huge dowries into marriages, there were women who were actively creating wealth, but they had no ability to do anything with it other than, go and buy fripperies and pretty things because that's what women were supposed to want to do. So it's no surprise that women have kind of a tortured history with money in some ways because for a long time we weren't allowed to manage it. And that's the origin also of a lot of the jokes that come up of, oh, I went shopping for supplies, craft supplies or whatever, and I had to hide them under the bed from my husband, or I have to burn this receipt, which I hate those so much. I'm just like, ugh. If you have a relationship where you have to hide how you spend money from your significant other, then you maybe need a new relationship or you need to look at how you're spending money, one of the two, because there are people who can go overboard. Shopping therapy is a thing for a reason. So, there are people who do spend too much and who don't manage their money wisely and who abuse their credit. And that's all part of the learning process of how to deal with money and how we think about money. But historically, you have to remember, and I've talked about this before, it was 1974 before women could get a credit card in their own name. That's in my lifetime, which don't even get me started about the fact that things in my lifetime are now like ancient history, but I don't want to think about that. But 1974, before a woman could have a credit card that had her name on it. Before that, I guess your husband would get two and you would get one. I don't know. And it would have his name on it, which is just weird to think about. And it was like 1988 before women could sign a contract without a male co-signer, I believe. I may be a little off on the specifics of that one, but it was not very long ago comparatively. And so women have historically been treated like they can't manage money. Women have historically not been allowed to manage money or make their own financial decisions. And historically, money has been one of the ways that women have been controlled. I think we should also put that in there too. When the male is the breadwinner in the house, the prevailing attitude was, well, then he has the say because he's bringing in the money. And that leads to the whole, if you make more than your male partner, are you emasculating him? Can relationships work when the woman is more successful than the man? All sorts of stuff like that, which I think is basically crap. But I think if you are secure in yourself, it doesn't matter who's bringing home the most in the relationship. Plus the fact that women operated in that setup for centuries. And certainly if you're the male in that relationship and your wife is, or your partner or whatever you want to call it, is bringing home more of the bacon, so to speak, then you're going to work it out. So that whole thing of if you make more than your male partner, you're emasculating him or whatever, that's crap. Come on. Women endured it for centuries and nobody ever said that we were being defeminized or whatever. But that's probably because the attitude was that women needed to be taken care of and we weren't supposed to make money anyway. So, but the history is very tangled. And I think that's why a lot of women have issues with managing money or talking about money or dealing with money because we haven't been. It isn't expected, even still today, always, for women to be successful, for women to have money, for women to make decisions about money. This is also the history of women's experience with money is also where the attitudes come from when you're at a trade show and you're looking at a piece of equipment and the salesperson asks, is your husband coming to look? Or you say, I want to go look around a little more. Let me think about it. And the response is, oh, you probably need to go talk to your husband. And I have encountered those situations myself. And I always kind of want to just punch the person who said it because it's like, I've never been married. I've never had a male partner that I was involved with enough to share finances, basically. And so I've always managed my own money for good or ill. And I will, put my hand up to there were times when I did not do a good job at it because I had a lot of things that I had been taught poorly about money that I needed to unlearn. So that's the next thing I want to talk about, which is what we're taught about money. And what we're taught about money could be societal messages. It could be cultural messages. It could be what your parents told you or your friends told you or what you saw on television or the movies told you. And again, if we look at the historical examples, in most movies or television shows for a very, very long time, the person who had the money was the man. And if the female was rich, she was the rich daughter or sister of the person who had the money. And she was usually kind of flighty and self-absorbed and kind of stupid and, running off doing madcap things. Ha ha ha, isn't that funny? You didn't historically until fairly recently, and even not so much recently, see women depicted as people who controlled their money, as women who were in charge of other people who were making money, as as people who wanted to make money. And one of the things I think that we're taught about money, some of it has its root in religion. I mean, the root of all evil is money is a saying for a reason. It was a thought process for a long time. And so we're often taught money's bad. Wanting money is bad. Wanting to make money is bad. It isn't nice to talk about money. We shouldn't compare salaries. We shouldn't talk about what we make. We shouldn't aspire to have money so we can have things because wanting things is bad and selfish. If we do make money, we should use it only to do good for other people. Any number of things, that there's something virtuous about living in genteel poverty. That's, that if you push and work and really want to make money, then there's something wrong with you, that you're, focusing on gain only and you're not a good person. I mean, there's any number of things that we're taught about money. We could have been taught that money is hard to get, that there isn't enough to go around, that we're going to have to struggle if we want to make a living, that it's the way that money is distributed is not fair, which there is some truth to that one. But there's a number of things that you can be taught about money. We also may have been taught money is love. If you care about someone, you'll give them money. You'll buy them things. I grew up, I will cop to this. I grew up with an exorbitant allowance. It was insane how much money I had when I was a teenager. Why that was, I don't honestly know, but it was how we operated. And granted, I had a lot of money, but I also was expected to purchase my own clothes and do other things with it. So it wasn't as though it was just allowance that I could buy tchotchkes with. But I remember one of the things that I used to get yelled at a lot was I've always been a huge reader. I love books. You can see from the bookcases on either side of me. So if I was given a choice between buying almost anything else and buying a book, I'm probably buying a book. And if I buy one book, I'm probably buying 3 books, just because that's how I operate. And yes, I know there are libraries and there are used bookstores and all that, but I wanted the latest books, whatever. So I thought in my mind, I could be buying junk food. I could be buying drugs. I could be buying video games. I mean, okay, video games weren't huge when I was a kid, but still, there were any number of other things I could be buying. Books seemed pretty benign, but my mother used to just go ballistic about it. And she just thought it was the silliest thing ever why did I keep buying all these books? What? And she was a reader too. So why it bothered her so much, I really don't know. But she had this thing about it. And so I went through this period where I felt guilty every time I bought a book. And then I went through this period where I was like, screw it, I'm buying every book I see because I want them and I will read them and I will get something out of them. So it's not like I'm wasting the money. It's, my addiction is books, where somebody else's addiction might be motorcycles or boats or whatever it is. And we all have them, those things, hobbies or pet pursuits or whatever you want to call them that we spend money on. And there's nothing wrong with that as long as you're not neglecting paying your bills and making sure you're housed and fed. And if you have a family that they're taking care of, as long as you're doing that, you're fine. Like, I'll give you another example. My father is a gambler, has been forever. And he always had a separate account into which his winnings would go, and he would use that to play poker, happened to be his game of choice. Now, his gambling never affected the family. He never dipped into, so far as I know, he never dipped into any of the family funds to fund his gambling. He had a separate account and he did it that way. He got enjoyment out of it, whatever. Now, that could have gone really sideways. And there are people who would tell you, well, it doesn't matter. Gambling is bad no matter what. It's a waste of money. Now, his gambling was an enjoyable activity for him. It did not take money away from anything else that it should have been going to. He was very, he was careful about that, is my understanding. And I don't know all the details of this. So what was wrong with it? If he got enjoyment out of it and he was using personal funds to do it and he wasn't depriving anybody else, what's so bad about that? But the teaching about that is, oh, gambling's wrong and it's a waste of money and he would have been better off, giving the money to charity or going back to school or doing whatever with it. And it's like, there are judgments about what the proper uses of money are and what they aren't. And the thing is, what I think is a proper use of money, you may think is crazy. You may look at my bookshelves and go, who's going to read that many books in their lifetime? And honestly, every book on these shelves I've read, and not every book on my Kindle. I have about 150 on there right now I haven't read, but I'm working through them. And you don't want to know how many books are on the Kindle, because that's just, I have an addiction. I'll admit it. But for me, that's enjoyment, that's learning, that's stress relief, that's a number of things where it's worth it to spend the money on that. And I don't want a motorcycle, and I don't want to, buy 3 tons of clothes, and I don't want to spend money on things that other people would perhaps choose to spend their money on rather than books. And that's okay. But what we're taught about money is that you're supposed to use it for basics and you're supposed to use it to help others. And that if you choose to spend it on yourself, that's kind of selfish and you shouldn't do that, which I think is crap because you earned it. Why shouldn't you have what you want? And also, if you want money, that there's something wrong with you, that you're focusing on the wrong things or whatever. And here's the problem with that. Whether we like it or not, money is security and money is freedom. If you have money, you can make choices. If you don't have money, your choices are much more limited. And we don't like to say that because we like to kind of put money off in a corner somewhere as though it doesn't impact our life, but it does. And trust me, I have been rock bottom poor where I wasn't eating for days at a time. It's a long story. And I think I might have talked about it on other episodes, but I've been that. I will tell you without question, being where I am now, way better than that. And being where I am now means that I do have choices. Maybe not all the choices I want to have at this point, but I also have unlimited possibilities. So there are more possibilities to make money. I just have to take advantage of them. But that's something that even as I say it, I'm going, ooh, what are people thinking about that? Where I should be going, you know what? I'm unashamed in the fact that I like having money. I like eating regularly. I like being able to pay my mortgage. I like having a reliable car. I like having medical care when I need it. I like that. I'd like, that is very much more preferable to other times in my life. So think about this. What were you taught about money? What do you think about money? How do you handle money? And how is that influenced by what you were told about it? Because that can make a big difference in how you handle money going forward. A lot of times you'll realize that a lot of what you're doing is influenced by stuff that maybe isn't healthy for you, maybe isn't helpful for you. So just think about that. Now, the next thing. This is an old trope that's been around for like centuries, pretty much. Women can't manage money. They can't balance. Not that a lot of people have checkbooks anymore, but some still do. They can't balance checkbooks. They can't balance a bank statement. They don't know how to pick stocks. They don't know how to deal with, money markets and CDs or any of that stuff. They don't know how to do that. And there's, this is a trope that's shown up in a million television shows where the woman has to bring the guy her checkbook so he can balance it for her, which just makes my head want to explode. Because women are no less good or bad at managing money than men are. There are men who can't manage money. There are, historically stories of numbers of men who had huge fortunes and lost them because they overspent or mismanaged them or trusted the wrong person and got their money stolen away. So not being able to manage money is not a gender-based trait. There are people who don't do it well. There are people who do it very well. And then most of us are probably somewhere in the middle. But this trope that women can't handle money, that we're just going to be frivolous with it, that we can't think about having a retirement plan or an IRA. We can't think about having stocks. That's why, really, honestly, I'm in the process of looking for an accountant or a money manager right now. And I'm pretty much only looking at women because I want to work with someone who's going to understand where I'm coming from and who's going to meet me on a level playing field. And like it or not, that's probably more likely to be a woman. And, we can say that this is a trope that's going away. I don't necessarily know that it is. And I like Cindy's comment here. I like money with a lot of exclamation points. Bills get paid first. Then whatever is left is designated to specific areas. I have a similar system, Cindy. And yeah, I like money too. I definitely think having it is better than not. But for a lot of people, I grew up with a father who basically thought that women couldn't manage money. His backhanded compliment to me when I saw him the last time I saw him, which is a couple of years ago, was, well, you must be doing better than I thought you would because you haven't asked me for money yet. Now, this is a man who has not supported me since I was 17, who I have never asked for money for in my life, even when I was starving, and I never would. But to him, that was a compliment. Hey, you didn't mess it up as much as I thought you would. Thanks. But that's all part and parcel of that attitude that hopefully is an old-fashioned attitude that's going away. But women can't handle money. If women get money, we're going to be frivolous with it. We're going to fritter it away. We're going to mismanage it. We can't balance a checkbook. We can't understand numbers, which so far as I'm aware, there is nothing that is gender-based when it comes to understanding how numbers work, understanding how money works. There is some gender issues with earning money, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But that is artificial and not endemic of being one gender or the other. So basically, this is another thing to think about. What were you told about how women handle money? What messages were you given? Were you told gee, you didn't mess it up as much as we thought you would? Or were you told you can do what you want with your money and you have the capacity to manage money? And Cindy says, in my side of the family, the women took care of all the accounting. Well, you grew up in a great family, Cindy, because not every family does that. And Jerry says, my wife does a great job of handling all of our money, way better than me, and I have a degree in accounting. And Jerry, I kind of love you right now, I gotta say. um, but I think I love Jerry's comment most because he and his wife have obviously worked out a system that works for them, and they acknowledge who has the skills to do the job best. And they're not worrying about who has the degree or what gender anybody is. And I think that's the way to do it. If you have the skills to do the job most competently, or if you like doing the job better, then you should be the one to do the job. And it doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman. If you're good at it and you enjoy it, great, do it. And so I kind of love that comment. Thank you, Jerry, and thank you for being here. So let's go back to another area that women have issues with, and that is setting prices. And I will say this. I've heard this a bazillion, trillion, million times, it feels like, since I started working in this industry and started writing and speaking and doing the things that I do. Women don't feel like they can ask for what they think they should charge. They're uncomfortable having discussions about pricing. They're uncomfortable admitting that they want to make a certain amount of money. Not every woman, but a lot of them. And what happens is you either wait for the other person to suggest what the price should be if you do work like I do, or you gulp out a number that maybe isn't a well thought out or well conceived number. I mean, you should really do the math and think about what you need to make, what your experience is worth, what you want to make, what the market will bear, all those kind of things before you ever set a fee in front of anyone. And the same thing really with when you're setting prices if you do hard goods or something. And for a lot of women, it's very uncomfortable to say, this is my work and this is what I'm charging for it, particularly if you get pushback. And I understand that because it is uncomfortable. The first time somebody said to me, I'd like to hire you for something, and what do you charge? And I went, and this was some years ago, but still, I didn't feel, and I did some jobs for less than I probably should have charged because I wasn't comfortable saying, you know what, I'm dang good at what I do, and I should make this amount. And it's hard to do, especially if you've been trained to think that wanting money is bad, if you've been trained not to talk about money, if you've been told that nice girls don't talk about money, if you've been told that haggling or, bargaining is not a good thing to do, or if you've just been conditioned to not like conflict. And if a customer comes back at you with, well, that's really high, your kind of instinct is to maybe lower the price so that you don't have conflict, so that they're happy, so that you're following the dictate that, nice girls make everyone happy. And don't get me started on nice girls because woo. But anyway, here's the thing. If you're doing the work, you deserve to get paid for it well. If you've put in the time and effort to learn how to do something, you deserve to get compensated for it in whatever manner you think is appropriate. And for some people, when you're just starting out, yeah, maybe you're going to take a little lower price because you're just starting out. But once you're established, charge everything the market will bear. Do what you need to do to make sure that you're not working 80 hours a week and just barely scraping by. And I know people who are doing that. It's not worth it. I will say I worked for a company for 14 years. I didn't make nearly what I should have for the benefit that I provided to that company. But back then, I was still, when I took the job for a specific reason. And honestly, I never thought I would be there that long. But then things happened and I ended up staying a lot longer than I thought I would. But I also didn't advocate for myself in terms of going to my boss and saying, hey, I'm doing this and this and this, and I took on these new duties and I should be making more money. Now, given the atmosphere at that place, I probably would have gotten fired, but maybe that would have been a good thing because then I could have gone somewhere and hopefully made more money. But that skill wasn't necessarily in my wheelhouse at that time. That's one thing that I've sort of learned since I've been on my own. And that's really that nobody is going to hand me money. If I want to make a certain amount, if I think my skills are valuable at this amount, then I need to advocate for myself to get that amount. And that's hard for a lot of women. And maybe it's something where you have to role play it and you have to practice with a friend or a spouse or whoever to get the words down and know what you're going to say. And also, you need to do the math. And definitely, please, please, please do the math. Because a lot of times people don't do the math and they set prices where they think they should be. And if they'd done the math, they would have found out that, hey, I could charge a lot more than I'm thinking I could and still be competitive. And there's nothing worse than realizing after the fact, well, okay, there are worse things, but it's kind of sad to realize after the fact that you could have made more without having to really work any harder if you had just charged for what the market could bear. And I'm kind of laughing here because we have not had sun here since the 1st of January. It's been cloudy all the time. And as I was sitting down to do this show, and I thought about opening the blinds or not. And I thought, oh, I'm going to do it because it's been cloudy forever. So really, what are the odds? Yeah, the sun is peeking through the clouds. I mean, I'm really glad to see it because we really haven't seen it for, like I said, 11 days. But at the same time, I'm like, really now? Because it'll shine right on my face, which is not what I wanted to do. But we'll see how it goes because probably it's not going to stay. But it's nice to see. Anyway, the next thing I want to talk about is abundance. And this is such a buzzword these days, and I know that, and I don't want to get all new agey and woo-woo on you. That's not the goal for this. But I do want to talk about it because I think the mindset that people have is that there isn't enough, that somebody has to lose for somebody to win, that if I make my pile of money, then you're not going to make as much, and that it's a zero-sum game and somebody has to lose. And it's the same thing with, well, I can't fire this customer because where will I get more customers? Or I'm a freelancer, but I'm really worried that there aren't enough jobs out there. Or I'm not going to be able to find jobs. Now, you have to change that mindset. And that I have to say, I will put my hand up to this. I had that mindset for years. I was very much, for a long time, every time somebody else had something good happen to them or got something that maybe I wanted, I was always like, well, they got it, so I'll never get it. Or how come they're getting it and I'm not, or whatever it is. And then I kind of changed that around and I realized that there's enough for all of us in this world. And that's not to say, now I want to say this, that's not to say that you're not going to have to work hard and you're not going to have to hustle. And you're not going to have to put yourself out there and you're not going to have to pursue the opportunities you want. This is not reciting every morning, one of the mantras of one of the millions of mantras that are out there. I don't even know. You know what ones I'm talking about. I now receive my good from expected and unexpected sources, or I'm open and receptive to all the good and abundance in the universe, or whatever it is. That doesn't mean you can do that alone and get where you want to get to. If you really want to experience abundance, you have to realize that it takes work, it takes time, it takes effort, it takes resilience, it takes stick-to-itiveness, it takes a number of things. So you have to be open to that. But the idea that if I get something, then you won't, or that the clients that I take means that there are less clients for you to take. No, that isn't true. Or if you fire a client, you'll never find another one. No, that isn't true. Like I said, it doesn't mean they're going to, as somebody said to me when I was lamenting not having a romantic relationship at the moment. And a friend of mine said to me, well, it isn't likely he's going to come up and sit on your doorstep and wait for you. So if you want a romantic relationship, you might have to actually go out and meet men. And I was like, ooh, that sounds hard. I'm not sure I want one that bad. But the idea is the same. If you say you want to make more money, if you say that you want to have more clients, if you say you want to sell more goods, then you have to do the work to take advantage of the abundance that is available. And it's not always easy. And it's about more than, sitting and reciting a mantra in the mirror every day or an affirmation. You got to do more than that. But at the same time, you also have to keep that mentality out there that just because person A or a competitor in your community gets a client doesn't mean that you are now going to have less. It doesn't mean that. Just because somebody gets an award that you wanted, it doesn't mean that the recognition isn't out there for you as well. It's just in a different form. And that, I have to say, was one of the best things that I learned, honestly, because I had from the way I grew up and from things that I was told, I had a very miserly sort of attitude, I guess I would call it. I had a very kind of, there isn't enough for everybody. And I needed to hold on tightly to everything that I had because I maybe wasn't going to get more. And over time, I have learned that there are enough opportunities. There is enough money. There are enough clients. There is enough chances. All of that is there for me. Now, like I said, doesn't mean I don't have to work for it. Doesn't mean I don't have to take chances. Doesn't mean I don't have to pursue it. But it does mean, oh, this sun is just making me crazy. Seriously? I mean, yay, I'm really glad it's here, but oh my God. Okay, so sorry, ranting, but I think when it comes to abundance, what you most need to remember is the idea that there's enough. Whatever it is, there's enough. And that if you're willing to work for it, you will receive what you need. But you can't sit in lotus posture and just recite mantras all day. You have to work for it. And if you're willing to do that, there's enough. And I think that is one of the concepts that has relieved the most stress for me. That is one of the concepts that has made me feel more open to opportunities, is that there's enough. We have abundance. We just have to work for it. What does money mean? This is the next thing I want to talk about. And it means different things for different people. It means security. It means freedom. It means the ability to buy things. It means the ability to have choices. It can mean lack of stress. It can mean abundance. It can mean all sorts of things. And everybody's definition of what money means is different, and none of them are wrong. For me, I have come to realize money is a combo of security and freedom. If I have money, I have choices. And as someone who at certain points in my life didn't have very many choices or didn't feel like she had very many choices, having choices is powerful for me. But it's also security. As someone who also at certain points in my life was really, really broke or was really, really mired in debt, money is security. Having money in the bank, being able to pay my bills, being able to put money away for a trip or for, retirement or whatever I'm going to do. So for me, that's really the definition of money. Money is security and money is freedom. Your definition, if I said, give me 2 words that describe money for you, might be really different. Maybe it's taking care of my family, or maybe it's realizing a dream, or maybe it's support. Whatever it is, they're your words and there's no right or wrong words to use. But I think we all need to look at what money means in our lives. Why are we working for it? Is it simply so we can have a bigger house and a bigger car than all our neighbors? Is it because we want to give money to charity? Is it because we do feel that it gives us freedom, or it gives us security, or it gives us opportunity, or whatever you want to call it? Is it because we want to travel, or we want to be able to support charities? Or I think if you know why you're working and what you're working toward, it makes more sense sometimes to you. And you also understand that money is not the be all end all. Money in and of itself is not bad or good. It's what you do with it. It's how you use it. And if you want money, you're not bad. You're not good necessarily either. You're just a person. Whether we like it or not, money is a means of exchange. The more you have of it, the more opportunities you have, the more things you can buy. Personally, I think there's a limit on, at some point, it's like, how much really do you need? Like 5 houses? Do you need 14 cars? Really? Do you? But those are not my particular passions. So, if it were me, I'd probably have a library with like 5 million books, and people would be going, do you really need that many books? You're going to have to live to be like 9 million to read these all. You know that, right? So I think it's a good conversation to have with yourself. What does money mean to you? What is the purpose of it? Money is just a means of exchange. That's all it is. It isn't inherently good or bad, but the purposes that we give it and the emotional and mental weight that we put on it can really mess us up. So we need to be aware of that. So we need to think about, what is the meaning of this stuff? And it isn't even really physical stuff anymore. I mean, I can't even remember the last time I handled cash. It's now bytes moving through the internet, basically. But it still is a means of exchange. It's still the way that my pantry gets filled. It's still the way my car gets gas. It's still the way that I pay my mortgage every month so I can have a roof over my head. All those things are important. So part of what money means to me, like I said, is security. It pays for the roof over my head. It pays for the safe space that I control, which, having been at times in my life in places that were neither safe nor places that I controlled, this is pretty cool, I gotta say. So think about it. What does money mean to you? Now, as I said earlier, we do need to talk about this, the wage gap. And anybody who's read any kind of economic news ever, even if it was once, probably knows about this. The wage gap is basically women still in 2023 make less than men on average. Not every woman, not in every occupational category, but most of them. Women make less than men. Now, here's the bit that you may not have read every time. You read about the fact that the wage gap exists. You don't always read about the consequences of that. What this means is women have a harder time saving for retirement. Single parent families, which are often primarily run by women, have a harder time staying above the poverty level, have a harder time maintaining medical care, have a harder time maintaining household and getting their kids what they need. So this is an issue. This is an issue. Gender should not have any bearing on how people are paid. If I do the same job as a man and I do it as well as a man, or do it as well as the men who are doing the job, then I should get paid the same amount. The theory that men are the breadwinners and women are the secondary incomes is really not valid anymore, but I think that's still used to justify the wage gap in some cases. And yes, there's been legislation about equal pay. And yes, there's been a lot of talk about it. But in actual practical, let's fix the situation, there hasn't been a lot. And what the cause or what the outcome of the fact that we haven't fixed this problem has been is women are suffering for it. Women over 65 have a harder time retiring. They have a harder time holding on to their houses. They're much more likely to slip into poverty because they historically have not made as much and they don't get paid as much and they couldn't retire. And I'm sorry, but not every woman, I can put my hand up to this one, has a spouse. I'm the only one as of right now. That's not to say that couldn't change, but I'm the only one right now that's providing for my retirement. I'm the only income I'm going to have to live on. And even if I did have a spouse, that's not to say that we would combine retirement accounts. There are people who are in relationships who their funds are totally separate and they handle it separately and they split things down the middle or whatever they do. So you have to think about that. The days where a woman never managed her own money because she went right from her father to her husband are pretty much gone. And we need to adjust for that. We need to adjust our attitudes and we need to adjust how we pay women. Because the wage gap is basically stupid. And that's my very unscientific, I am not an economist, but that's my very unscientific take on it. It's just dumb. It's an old, antiquated attitude that needs to go. And really, we should be advocating harder for it to go. The fact that it's lasted this long, I think, really needs to be looked at. And the last thing, and this may be one way to fix the wage gap problem. We need to talk about money. We need to talk about how to handle it. We need to talk about what we're making. There was a movement, and I'm not citing Hollywood as a bastion of anything, just to make that clear. But there was a movement a couple years ago in Hollywood where historically male stars get paid more than female stars, but there was also this kind of ban on talking about what you made. And men and women in the industry started sharing what they were getting paid. And some men in the industry, which kudos to them, were also advocating for their female co-stars to make the same amount of money as they were. And what happened is it equalized out, but it required everybody making a commitment to make that happen. And not every man is willing to do that. Not every woman is willing to do that. And a lot of people are not willing to talk about money. They don't think it's nice. They think it causes conflict. They're told if they talk about what they make that it'll cause problems or they'll be penalized or whatever it is. We still should talk about it. What do you make? What are you getting paid? What is it? Is it worth it to you? Who's getting paid more than you? Who's getting paid less than you? Why is that? We need to have these discussions. And that's part of why I wanted to do this show, because I wanted to talk a little bit about money is a bigger thing than just here's this piece of paper that I can give you so you will give me something. There's a lot of emotion centered around money. There's a lot of unfairness centered around money. There's a lot of uncomfortableness centered around money. And we need to talk about all that stuff, because the only way to get rid of these problems or to fix these problems is to acknowledge that there are problems and to talk about them. And so that's really one of the reasons why I wanted to do the show, because I want to start a discussion, and hopefully some of you already did in the comments tell me things. And hopefully you'll talk about it with your family or your spouse or your friends or whoever. And hopefully you'll take a look at what you think about money and fix any areas where you may need to adjust some thinking. I mean, that's one of the great things about being a human, I think, is that you can always learn to do better. And you can always change thinking that maybe isn't working for you anymore, which I think that's one of the beautiful parts of being human. So anyway, I am pretty much at the end of where I wanted to be. My voice is starting to go a little cracky again, so yay for that. And the sun is deciding to get in my face, and yay, sun, nice to see you, but really could have waited a little bit. Anyway, thank you all for being here. Thank you for joining me as always. I am working on some guests. I have some people who are looking at dates they're going to book right now. So we may actually start having interviews again, which would be really fun. But if I don't have a guest next week, I'll be back with another topic of conversation. Thank you all for being here. I appreciate it so much. Thank you for your comments. Hopefully this sparked some ideas or some thought for you. And if you have any comments that you'd like to share, you can always do that on the Women and Business Facebook page. So please do that if you are. Sorry, I was reading a message that somebody sent me. Thank you, everybody. I will see you all next week. Bye.